Man, I mean, like when I got into nootropics, my entire life changed. Like my productivity doubled. I was able to induce focus on cue, motivation on cue. I just felt amazing. Aniracetam, oxiracetam, 9-methyl-B-carboline. Like the choices are endless, and what you can do if you're stacking effectively, it's incredible. What's up, everybody? It's Joy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on Nootropics. Thanks so much for being with me. Thanks for being here with the podcast. Those of you that stepped up and emailed or tweeted rather YouTube and Team YouTube and stuff about our ban on YouTube, which recently got reinstated. Thank you so much for putting in that effort. I think we just got hit by the Autobot. I guess the Autobot was hearing words like if I use the word Adderall or something, it might think that we're talking about it or pushing to sell it or whatever. Anyway, YouTube cleared it up and we're back. In the meantime, what supports this broadcast is a couple of nootropic products. Number one, the Cortex stack. Like this stack was what I was using to run a company 18 hours a day. Verbal fluency, motivation, mental energy, the will to work. Cortex is a powerful nootropic stack, and you can get it two ways. Either singularly, just get a bottle of Cortex or two, or the better way to do it is do auto ship. Even if it's your first time getting Cortex, you get it for cheaper for $27.99, and then if you love it, it just ships automatically every month to your doorstep at the same time for the same price. Nothing ever changes and your grandfather didn't. If for some rare reason you hate it or don't like it enough, then you can just cancel it. Do it singularly or do auto ship at livecortex.com. Listen, if you're new to nootropics, you have to watch Nootropics Ground Zero. It's a video course that I created for people that are new to not only show you the ropes of how to use nootropics, but to give you a framework for getting results. It's called Nootropics Ground Zero. It's a video course. You get it at livecortex.com. Another video course that you should get if you're 1 to 2 years in, but you really need to ascend to the 5 to 6 year mark is the Nootropics Masterclass. It is a long video course that's highly information dense that teaches you a lot of the advanced strategies around that 6-year mark that nootropic users use. And you can also get that at livecortex.com. Last couple things. Look, if you're a young male or a middle-aged male or even an older male, business male on the corporate side or the entrepreneur side, and you want to fully explore what it is to perform at extreme levels in terms of cognitive performance, work with me. We've got basically one-on-one, hands-on, results-driven, biohacking, sort of neuroengineering consults where you're working directly with me daily to establish a whole set of highly effective, tailored nootropic stacks for you, and then putting you on an effective rotation schedule for those, and at the same time addressing any energy baseline issues that we have to, because sometimes we have to do that too in order to make nootropics work better. Full-on neuroengineering, 3.5 months or 6-month consults at livecortex.com. Do that if you're a business person and have the budget. Okay, so I want to talk about my latest experience in kind of microdosing PRL-853. It's been interesting because, I guess historically I really dosed between 5 and 8 milligrams and tried to stack it with other things, taking it by itself. And look, I get a pretty interesting response from it. I don't take it all that often, but it's the kind of compound that I would take if I'm just going to sit down for a couple hours. It doesn't really last all that long for me, 3-4 hours in total, and do a lot of brain work that is going to require me to be focused, but also be able to sort of manage a lot of pieces of information in my brain. So like as an example, Cortex Labs is going to shift into being a powder company. I mean, we're still going to do all the rest of the stuff that we continue doing, but we're going to become a source for nootropics powder. So there's a lot of logistics that go into that. So very recently, I was microdosing PRL-853 each time that I sat down to do some of the logistical works, like on a notepad, to figure this out. So, but what is interesting about it, so let me just explain the effects. Microdosing PRL-853 is sort of hard because the regular dose is 5 to 8 milligrams. To microdose that, you have to weigh out a very small amount on the milligram scale, and then basically like split it in half, split the amount of powder in half, and you're basically getting 2.5. That's where I've been at as of lately. Now, when I do this, it's also usually in the morning. So I've just had some caffeine, B complex, some krill oil. So that kind of gets my brain in a really cool place to sort of start and sit down and work. And I find that even in that microdose capacity for that first 2 hours, look, that's a critical time. You can get a lot done in 2 hours, especially if you're like eating the frog, getting the most important stuff done first. my capacity to do central processing brain work is better. It's not super substantial. Again, that's not what I'm aiming to do. I'm just microdosing it to see, and it's better. I'm like, oh, this is a very pleasant baseline. It is a pleasant place to be. My brain is processing well. I can compartmentalize information better. If I'm holding and putting in and out a bunch of pieces of information, it's a lot easier with doing this. And that's just, a mere 2.5 milligrams of PRL-853. So now you could stack it, however, with other things that are trying to achieve a similar chemical makeup, like central processing and memory, like using racetams. So one of the things that I have been doing over the course of been doing this for about 3.5 weeks, experimenting with PRL on this microdose capacity, is bringing in oxyracetam, aniracetam, and pramiracetam. Aniracetam specifically is a lot more useful on the side of memory storage, like information storage in and out. So I decided to pair a medium dose, just 400 milligrams of aniracetam. That morning, I had eaten some eggs for breakfast. I eat eggs for breakfast every morning. But I did take a choline source. I took 50 milligrams of CDP choline. I wanted to kind of add a little bit of that dopamine release and that kind of energized, motivating stimulant feeling to it, but also provide some acetylcholine. And then I had my 2.5 milligrams of PRL and some coffee and a B complex and some DHA because it was, right around the morning time frame. And that stack was really powerful, surprisingly, because it's not like you're dosing. I didn't really dose things super high. It was the synergy of compounds that are working toward like goals in terms of brain function. So I had PRL-853 allowing me to store more information in my brain and have a better functional working memory. I had aniracetam stimulating me and kind of giving me energy and making focus a little better, but then working on memory and putting information in and out of my brain. And then I had my coffee, which was just giving me like extra baseline energy. And then I added the 50 milligrams of CDP choline. And that combination, it's like, I love these simplistic stacks that, like, if your baseline is good, you respond really, really well to. 50 of CDP, 2.5 of PRL, 400 of aniracetam, some coffee. And then you're in. It was just so awesome. And for 3 hours, I got a lot of work done on this notepad that I'm kind of writing everything down and dealing with the logistics on, this Nootropics product company that I've started. And more to come on that. Like it's going to be a while. I've got to get product in and set up a lab and all this kind of stuff. But I'm doing the logistics now. I also tried 2.5 milligrams with 100 milligrams of pramiracetam and 50 milligrams of CDP choline and some coffee. And that was really awesome. It was a little different. I felt like maybe a little less stimulated because, aniracetam tends to stimulate people and definitely stimulates me to that point where I'm like, oh, I actually really notice this. And it's not that I didn't notice this combination, but it was just like more of when I went in to do the cerebral work, it was a lot easier, and I didn't necessarily feel all that stimulated aside from the CDP choline giving me like a little bump above baseline and the coffee giving me a bump above baseline. So that stack was 2.5 milligrams of PRL. It was 100 milligrams of pramiracetam, 50 milligrams of CDP choline, and some coffee. And it was awesome. It was very, very awesome. My last experiment that I did recently was PRL plus Cortex, and that did not go well. For whatever reason, some interaction with uridine and PRL-853, I just don't know. I've got to go back to the drawing board and try to figure that out. But I'd taken the Cortex stack, couple capsules of Cortex, which usually just turns on motivation, mental energy, brain performance in general. Like, if you've been putting off or procrastinating on tasks, it's a lot easier to just do them when you take Cortex. Your brain's like, oh, I know what to do. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it flawlessly. But in this particular case, like it sort of seemed to me like that effect, which is not necessarily memory enhancement on storage capacity, was sort of like not interacting well with the memory enhancement on the storage capacity part with PRL. So it basically what it did is it gave me the effects of Cortex, but no central memory processing enhancement. I don't know if something got nullified there or whatever. And then about 2 hours after I took this stack, I kind of felt a little lethargic. Like there was some sort of choline mismatch in my brain. And yeah, it didn't really work out well. I'm going to retry that experiment with some coliracetam just to see if like and maybe add a little choline to it and see if like a little more choline from the CDP that's in Cortex. Maybe I wasn't uptaking it properly. Maybe it wasn't transmitting properly. There was certainly something wrong on the choline side. For those of you that have ever taken Nootropic or racetams, but paired them with biological precursors to acetylcholine and gotten some sort of strange effect, that's why, right? It's choline matches. It's either choline not uptaking properly or not being transmitted correctly, and that's what I think happened there. But I had 3 very successful experiments with microdosing PRL-853 with aniracetam, pramiracetam, CDP choline and coffee, and honestly it was really interesting. And then by itself, just 2.5 milligrams of PRL. I want to reiterate for folks, if you're going to try this, which I totally suggest you should, because it will give you some central processing benefits to do work that you kind of need that type of brain for. Understand that 2.5 milligrams of PRL is extremely hard to weigh out. Okay, so you would have to take something like a toothpick or even like a small knife and dip it into the PRL powder jar to get a little bit at the tip of it, like a small knife, and then drop that on the milligram scale and then see where you're at. Like the smallest amount you can get usually ends up being like 6 or 7 milligrams. So you sort of just taper a little bit of that powder off and sort of set it aside with like a credit card or something, and then let the scale balance out, and then it'll be around 5 milligrams at that point. And then you can turn the scale off at that point, because once it reads 5, you just split it in half. You take a credit card and split the powder in half, take the other powder and put it back in the jar, and then capsule that 2.5 milligrams of PRL-853. I learned how to do this when trying to microdose Nootropic, which also yielded some really interesting results, which I should probably talk about soon. I know I have talked about that in the past in some content, but I'll do a separate video about that. That's how I learned to microdose it, and it actually is doable. As arduous as it may seem and as difficult as it may seem, it actually is doable. So the takeaway is try microdosing a little bit of PRL. Weigh out 5 milligrams the best you can, split it in half. You'll get 2.5. Take that by itself and see how you fare. See if that allows you, and then make sure you're engaged in work where your storage capacity in your functional working memory is working or is being tested. Like you have to have working memory and put things in and out of it, and then just see how good you do. As another exercise, like when I'm testing stuff like this, like I want to aside from working, just to rule out the chance of placebo, like I want to think of phone numbers and people's names and just try to hold a bunch of information in my head and see if it's better than baseline. You may want to do that as well. Okay, so more experiments to come. Thanks so much for listening. God, I have so much in the book. There's just a lot going on with Cortex Labs right now. Again, the powder company coming, products that I've been writing and working on for a while that are somewhat close to being done, but still need work. And but goddamn, so much more content to come. I mean, the content list of stuff that I've got to talk about is endless, so you guys are going to see it. Thank you so much for those of you that stuck up for me on YouTube and tweeted Google to get the channel back up. Go to the Cortex Labs Nootropics channel on YouTube for so much content. At this point, there's I looked at it yesterday because yesterday was the day it got deleted for 24 hours. There's 1,300 videos or something. I mean, it's just so much content going back 6 years from me when I first started getting into things like Huperzine A and stuff. It was just so much content on there. Thanks for those of you that supported us. Really appreciate it. Go to livecortex.com, get some product. Number 1, Cortex Stack. Look, mental energy, motivation, the will to work. Who doesn't want that? Stimulation. It's like a stimulant, non-stimulant. Cortex is just a very unique set of chemicals put together that turn the brain on. Get it singularly or do auto ship at livecortex.com. Auto ship gets you cheaper. It is a better deal. Nootropics Ground Zero if you're new to nootropics. Viking Testosterone Protocol if you're a guy that has to raise test. And then lastly, listen, we've got slots open on the 3.5 month and the 6 month programs. These are neuroengineering programs where we're using nootropics and tailoring formulating tailored stacks to you. Like, everybody does respond differently to nootropics, but you have to have a specialist to sort of help you through the process of establishing a large array of stacks and then put you on an effective rotation schedule, an ERS. Having an ERS is like utterly critical in ongoingly taking nootropics. But at the same time, in those consults and those sort of brain performance engineering consults, there may be other things that we have to address too. It's not just about nootropics. Those are mainstay and the centerpiece, but we're focusing on energy. If there's sleep issues, we're focusing on that. The goal being, and we have a high success rate in achieving substantially good brain performance, functioning like you were when you were very young. And even if you didn't function that well then, learning what it feels like to feel at that limitless state. That can be achieved. Work with me on either a 3.5 month or 6 month basis. Find those consulting packages at livecortex.com. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. So much more content to come. We'll talk to you next time.